In this video, we'll cover using the Great Expectations command line interface to integrate the library into an existing project. I've built a project using the National Provider Identifier data from the United States Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We've got a data directory here where I've put a couple of the weekly update drops from that data set, as well as a source repository where we have a notebook with some exploratory data analysis and an actual pipeline file, in this case running locally on a node in Python. Now, we recommend integrating Great Expectations directly into your version control system so that it's easy to keep the artifacts like your expectation suites together with your source files for the actual processing of the data. Let's go ahead and run the init command, and Great Expectations is going to offer to go ahead and scaffold a new directory in that version controlled system where we'll put a couple of notebooks that walk you through the process of getting started with Great Expectations, but also the core project configuration file, as well as storage for actual expectation suites, and some additional resources that we recommend not be committed to the repository, like local configuration variables. So let's move forward. Next, we need to add a data source. Now, a data source in Great Expectations brings together the world of the expectations and that semantic knowledge that you can encode with the compute environment where they'll be evaluated. So that could be on a local node using pandas. It could be on a remote relational database connecting via SQL Alchemy. So that could be any of the supported backends from Snowflake to Redshift or Postgres. And we could also operate on a remote Spark cluster. For the data demo here, let's just move forward with a pandas data frame. With pandas, we need to get started by also pointing the data source at the resources that it should be using to load data. Now that could be S3, that could be in-memory data frame objects that we're getting from another node in the pipeline or through our pipeline orchestration system like Airflow. But for now, we'll go ahead and move forward with the data that I described in our local data directory. So we'll point pandas at that directory and name our data source. Now, one of the really powerful things about Great Expectations is the ability to integrate notifications into your pipeline so you can always stay up to date on how new data sets are comparing to the expectations that you've laid out for them and for their specific purposes. It's really easy to do that, so I'll go ahead and create a new webhook right now. We've got some documentation on this, but I've created a empty GE notifier app, and we'll just click Add New Webhook, and we'll add it to a demo notifications channel. That gives us a webhook URL, and we can just paste that right in. Given the data directory that we pointed the new data source that we created to, we've found a single data asset, and so we can go ahead and profile that. So that data asset corresponds to the type, the weekly data. Now you'll notice I had two specific batches of the data, but we want the same expectations to apply to all of our batches. What profiling is doing is looking at one of those batches and adding a number of candidate expectations to them. The profiling expectations don't have really rigorous ranges of expectation. Rather, they are designed just to present an overview of the data and provide a starting place for us to work from. You'll see we had 329 columns, a little over 2,000 expectations that were created as a result. And those will again include things like type and statistics about the columns. Now that we've gotten some profiling and correspondingly an expectation suite, let's go ahead and build data docs. Now, data docs are a way to visualize the expectation suites, validation results, and profiling results that are created using Great Expectations. It's a very powerful tool for keeping teams in sync. While I build these data docs, what's happening is Great Expectations is looking at the expectation suites, the profiling and validation results, and building static sites that we can store locally or drop, for example, on a S3 static site to be available to colleagues. The site shows the data source that we just created as well as the specific national provider identification data. And you'll see there are a couple of artifacts generated. The profiling results include things like the total number of missing cells, the number of variables and observations, and then for each of the columns, we see a quick overview of what's there. The entity type code, for example, appears to have simply two possible values, and the vast majority of them are 1. Now you notice when I hover over any of these statistics, Great Expectations is showing me what the expectation is that was used to create that data point. That's a great way to discover new expectations and use them to make more precise what you actually expect in your data. We see some example values, value counts, and other great, just useful summary information for getting a feel of the data. When we continue in the Create Expectations notebook section, you'll see us using these overviews as a starting point for building more useful expectations. Thank you very much.